And viewers, getting into our show this morning, of course, the hot topic for today is what's been going on with the vessel that's stuck at Cove, the fuel and the oil that's continuing to leak. I mean, we heard yesterday the Chief Secretary was able to identify that as diesel that's been leaking out of that vessel. Now, we were able to determine the name of the vessel, but we have not been able to get any more information at this point in time. I know the Tobago Coast Guard was supposed to do some dives yesterday, but because of the rough seas, they were not able to do that. Now, I'm being joined by Mr. Allan Stewart, and of course, he's the director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency and one of the people that's at the helm of this mission as we try to, I don't know, minimize whatever damage that's happening out there. It's already quite damaged out on the reef. The oil is already doing some damage in our waters. But I know Mr. Stewart is trying his best and mobilize on what resources he can. Now, first of all, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kandace, and good morning, all of Tobago. I'm tempted to say it's a pleasure to be here. I think
we wish it was under better circumstances.
That's correct. So we are doing what we are charged to do, and therefore we are trying to get on with the task. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's start with what happened last night. So there was a lot of work that happened last night where some oil booms were situated in the Scarborough port, and that is to prevent some of the fuel and the oil that's leaking out from reaching into our waters. So give us an idea of what that process was yesterday. And
so yesterday afternoon, there was a technical meeting held with various stakeholders. Prime to that meeting, relative to what we are going to speak about, was the marine affairs and also the division of the works that deals with the marine interests. The director pointed out to us that based on the intelligence that he would have gathered, that there was a strong possibility that the tide conditions will change on us, and therefore we were arguing. So while I'm using the word arguing, not quarreling, we were arguing whether or not it may be necessary to cancel the sailing of the inter-island ferry, because based on the construct of these fast vessels, certainly they cannot come into contact with oil of that nature, and therefore the cleaning process, if that happens, is one that you can't do with hands very easily. And therefore, having that intelligence, we then thought our priority then on a greater level was to ensure that we can protect the port. So the limited resources that we have on the island, we were able to redirect it to the port with the cooperation of some of the teams that were on yesterday, the logistics team, and from CERT and Kaizen, who would have joined us. So we were able to successfully, we completed the task just after midnight, with the hope that the fast ferry will not be impacted by the oil. So the current did swing into the port, and it started. We saw just around 6-7 o'clock last night that started to happen, and therefore we were able, by midnight, we were able to successfully lay in place that protection for the port of Scarborough, so that the ferry service is not interrupted.
Now, just to stick a pin, can we just get an idea of how the mechanism works, just for the viewers?
Okay, so what happens is that these booms that you see, it's called booms. We have over 1,600 feet in length that were available to us, that we normally have stored here on the island through Kaizen and the relationship we had with Woodside, which is the takeover company from BHP Billiton. Yeah, so the installation it's a 24-inch boom. It comes in pieces of 10 feet in length, and therefore you put those pieces together and you utilize a vessel to pull it into position by physically at making these attachments, and also you anchor it with anchors at different layers of the run. And so it holds and it creates a barrier. So that 24, most of what you see is underwater. It's buoyant, so it floats on the surface of the water and it creates a barrier on the surface. Oil normally floats on water. However, tide conditions or tidal behavior sometimes could allow it to be breached by where splashes. As we know, the port area is a pretty quiet area based on the water defense that we have just around the Coast Guard area. So that worked quite well. And this morning, based on the reconnaissance that we would have executed, we saw that definitely that it worked quite well. And we may have to redirect some of the resources to other places like in the mangrove. We have some challenges, and it's important sometimes to tell the truth in a
Yes, yes,
particular way.
and I mean, and Mr. Stewart was telling me because we have, I mean, or naturally because we do not produce oil. Oh,
We
that's
produce oil.
all right. So because we don't have an active energy industry here in Tobago, we don't have those resources on the island, and there's quite a lot that needs to come up to Tobago to mitigate what's going on there on the seas to clean up and so on, because the peat moss that you originally had is not working because of the type of oil it is, which is diesel that's on the seas.
Yeah, the peat mud works in certain based on the viscosity of the oil itself. So that has been used in certain areas, but it will not work for when it becomes that thick and comprised with the sargassum. It just didn't work. It wouldn't work in that instance. So it requires vacuums, chocks to be able to pull and suctions using other assets that will normally that we'll have to take into consideration. So these will involve the nearshore booms, which was utilized last night. We also have the shore sealing booms, diaphragm pumps and things like that, trash pumps, and so the skimmers and other accessories, we have those in stock, and several bales of absorbent application that will be utilized. And therefore these things are all in the game as we speak. What is imperative to understand is that there are logistical challenges. The logistical challenge is moving resources from one island to the other. So we would have put some arrangements in place, and the bureaucracy is one of the challenges that we run into, and we continue to run into, with all efforts to lower those bureaucracy, in terms of what can be done and how it can be done, how it can be expedited, the procurement process of getting things. So we have successfully lowered some of those expectations, and that is working. But the logistics is not fast enough for this type of bullet that is coming our way from different direction. Another thing is the details that is needed in terms of are we getting oil from two different locations? That seems to be two or three streams of oil coming towards us.
Wait a minute. So in other words, that there is another source. Is it coming from the ship?
Coming from the ship that statement needs to be qualified in a particular way. What is happening is that based on the intelligence coming out of the technical meetings, what we realize is that where the ship is located, which is southwest of the island, there are oil streams that are coming based on satellite imagery from the northeastern end of the island, meaning say up at the east, which we'll call like Mount St. George, Pembroke, further to those areas. There were sightings in Roxborough. We got those reports. The satellite imagery confirms saying that good. So while the satellite imagery were able to show you the vessel where it is, then you see the streams coming down from the northeastern end of the island. So that tells a story. And so yesterday we viewed those images satellite picture that was produced, going back into the history, and you get it from the relevant stakeholder. What is happening is that that information now, we have used it in a particular manner, but we don't have the resource currently to really block these bullets coming from both ends. So the limited resources that we have to now decide how to utilize it and where it can be easily deployed. Some of which require clinical manpower, some of which require machinery to move into place, things like that, like the vessels. So we would have done that, but as I said before, we recognize that this one ship, based on the intelligence, may have been emitting oil earlier before it came into the resting place that is now at.
Okay, so all the traces of oil that you're seeing are coming from the or have come from the ship.
Yeah, it's we are still doing the scientific testing, taking the samples. Those samples were taken down by the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard to Trinidad, and so we'll get the truth in terms of facts. But the intelligence that we are gathering based on the reconnaissance mission, the dives, for example, the debris field suggested something, so we were able to view the footage of the underwater footage, which showed the age of the vessel and not something that was a wreck that was very recent. So, we started off this conversation as to whether or not there were souls wrong, because we just saw that a vessel capsized. So while it will look like a capsized vessel, the information is that this vessel was wrecked in an earlier date and time, and therefore was underwater moving, and the debris field from the dive reveal that there are scales of debris, some chains, cranes like information, and then so those are the type of information that allow us to know definitely that we're dealing with something that is not very recent.
And do you have any clue at all as to what area it may have come from?
No, we know definitely that that same trajectory suggests one thing. When you see where it came from, in terms of his nationality, what we have to do is to, the Coast Guard is out this morning again. The two boats are going to be engaged again this morning to try to see if the conditions where the ID is located, it will be
IMO number.
That's right. So whether we'll be able to pull that information from what you're seeing, just where they think that that information is lodged, it was very difficult for the teams to go in and get that detail. They were able to confirm based on the footage that we reviewed from the underwater missions, the name of the vessel. However, there are many vessels with that name. So that number is very, very imperative. It's like if you're going to Mason and you also Dexter Henry. Yeah, you do know Dexter Henry? Yes. From Mason, yeah. But there are two Dexter Henry in Mason.
Yes, and because when we found out the name, Mr. Alvin Douglas was able to give us that information on Wednesday night. We went and looked, but there are hundreds of ships with the name Gulfstream, and there's a lot of people posting photos online with ships that are said to be Gulfstream. I mean, yes, they bear the name Gulfstream, but those are not. So those are not the ships.
I'm aware of the information making the wrongs on social media. Now, while we use the information for one thing and debunk the information, we now we have a responsibility as a state to provide the facts. And to get the facts is very, very challenging. But the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard is committed to that course, because those are the hard, intelligent questions that one will ask.
Yes.
Are you sure? Did you see the number? And therefore, that have not been realized as yet. The dive area is a very tricky area in terms of what is happening with the vessel. It is bouncing still, and therefore it is hard to even get close enough to it to do certain things. And it is very dangerous. We were warned about it by the frontier divers who went down. and what is behaving with the suctions, and not to be pulled in under it, things like that, and
I
it's
think he
bouncing.
explained that it was like a delta P effect, similar to what happened at Paria with that
That's right.
unfortunate situation. So that is actually preventing the divers from getting too close, because if they do, well, we don't want to lose them. Certainly not Mr. Alvin Douglas.
Yeah. So the teams I recall, the Coast Guard will position themselves yesterday to do the dive, and then I know they call it off. So they are back there this morning again with the objective to satisfy the uplines as to people like ourselves, to confirm that this is the vessel and this is the area, this is the direction you need to point blame and get the history, because once you get that information, we'll get to know, confirm that yes, this vessel was decommissioned, probably a wreckage somewhere that went and this broke its mooring, because there are evidence suggesting certain things, but it needs to be factual until we can get that ID number. We just use the intelligence to do what we are doing currently.
Now, while all of that is happening in the background, trying to figure out the ship, there still is a concern on the coastlines in Lambo, as you mentioned, in the mangroves.
A very, very serious challenge.
I got some information that is getting pretty bad in those mangroves there at Plantation, Estate, and so on. I mean, in Petty True, sorry. But what is the mobilization team focus on today in terms of getting some of that oil treated with?
They will be going back into the fields today. There are two major zones that have been set up to tackle this thing based on the plan. Yesterday we saw 36 persons coming forward to do Scarborough. We also had 31 persons that were in the southwestern end down at Petutru, and we will be moving teams into the mangrove area. We have moved some assets, the floatable dinghies, to be able to assist in that regard. However, the supporting tools, it's still a logistical nightmare to get them into place. There was some, as I said, we would have declared that based on our assessment that this is a tier 2 now, and therefore national assets is critically needed. So while people are making efforts to and promises to make those available resources at our doorsteps, the logistics of moving them, we've made communications with the port. We try to position certain things that once the vendors can produce the thing, we will get it on to the vessel. The port committed, Mr. Caseman and his team, they commit to it, but it just did not work out in time, so we're working with that again tomorrow. The Coast Guard that is currently here was supposed to bring up some things last night. That did not happen, it did not work out. The stuff from that we requested out of Trinidad just wasn't able to sometimes get the ceilings and all that kind of stuff. So those are some of the challenges, but we will be redeploying some of the assets that we have. We were supposed to go to Magdalena late yesterday evening. I know I have given the commitment to them already that we will give them the necessary PPEs that are needed to do it. Because, one thing is the willingness to do what you have to do, but you require the tools to protect yourself, protect the environment. So you have those two things that you're tossing up with. And, but the spirit of things is good. People are coming forward and everybody is willing. We have spoken to the Chief Secretary, have been communicating at very high levels.
Yes.
And also the commitment is there. This is the task, and it's a cleanup task that we have to undertake. It is going to be very brutal, and it's currently impacting our mangroves, so we definitely know it's going to take that type of approach, and we are going through with it. I want to encourage the teams. I don't want to say anything negative to that, turn them off in any way, but we want to encourage them in the time and the commitment. We are very aware of the season as well. Carnival is right there, and these are some of the challenges that we are treating with. There are, cultural clashes along with the emergency, and how we treat with it is an uphill battle. But we are acquainted with these circumstances, and I said the emergency responders are all committed to the task, And I want to encourage them this morning as we go forward again to see what we can do to protect our environment and our ecosystem.
Yeah, because this is a very serious concern. Now, yesterday, the Chief Secretary mentioned that this looks like a situation that we may need international help. And have we been speaking to any international bodies to lend assistance in any way?
Yeah, there are a number of vendors that are coming to the table. I have been receiving a lot of advice, and you have to be very cordial. Diplomacy have to be played.
Certainly.
In other words, you have to appreciate what everybody's bringing to the table. So there's another meeting. Wow, I'm supposed to be. I'm 5 minutes late to the meeting. So folks, I'm coming. Are we supposed to be having another technical meeting with some of these partners, these international partners who are bringing what they can to the table, what they can bring. The problem is the logistics, and the problem is the time. The logistics and time plays a serious role. Yes, I could give you this, but could you get it to the Tobago? No,
And
it's
we need
needed
it now.
and that is the challenge. So a lot of people are. Sometimes they are telling us things that we have, they are telling us things that we know, but we listen and we try to appreciate all that we can get, and we encourage them to do the same. Yes, you asked about the international input. Those talks are going to be happening at an official level, but at a local level, we have started having those discussions with people who are in the game. Shell will be reaching out to us, a number of different players.
Great.
Now, what is happening too is that the tier 3, we believe the ODPM will be seeking to have conversation with CDMA as well. But one of the things that we recognize, Kandace, is that at the international level, it will take on a particular picture. One of the things that there are some hard things that needs to be done. One, the vessel. There are discussions. We had technical discussion about the vessel where it's resting. It's very uncomfortable for the Tobago House of Assembly and for all of us in the pit here. Now, the time, if it's rest there too long, then it takes on a different picture of the debris removal, which is very challenging and very costly at the same time. So those situations lend itself to some challenges, but those are discussions down the road. Immediately, what we are dealing with is the environment and the how to cordon off the area. The objective is to put booms around the vessel
to prevent more oil.
Prevent more. So we have been communicating with the Coast Guard. By 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, they were supposed to get back to us to tell us whether or not it is still emitting oil. If it is still, we are going with the perception that it is still, and therefore cordon it off. The other thing is that we need to do is to have flights that will suggest to us whether or not upstream there is still oil coming, because with the limited resources, we cannot block all of them. So they are getting to the coastline. They are getting to our shorelines, and that is some of the challenges that we are faced with. So we need intelligence to know. Coming out of all of this, one of the things that we definitely will have to do is to build more capacity on the island.
And before you go, Mr. Stewart, and I mean, of course, that's a conversation for a little bit later. I just want you to just speak to the public themselves. So if we go to the coastline and we encounter the oil, what should the public be aware of? How should they handle themselves? What they should know about the situation at this point in time to keep themselves safe?
Well, the oil in itself is a hazard. This is a friendly oil for coming into contact with your skin, or even certain type of equipment. It's very brutal to a certain type of equipment, and also we advise persons to avoid getting into physical contact or coming into contact with your skin. But if it does, you need to use a certain type of detergent to remove it as quickly as possible. And those persons who are coming forward to volunteer, we ask that you have yourself properly done in the right PPEs, which is rubber boots, overalls, and also gloves that can resist oil in some way or the other. Not just leather gloves will not work. And These are some of the procedural steps one may need to have on the necessary mask, eye gear, and even our teams that are responding to this event. We ask them to continue to exercise the due diligent caution and protect yourself at all times.
And should anybody go in the water if there's oil around?
No, you should not bathe in the water. Bathing in the water or even extracting. We have not seen it as yet, but there is the possibility that you may have a fish kill. We have not seen it as yet. It's not a time to harvest that fish for cooking purposes. So those are things that I know later on the Division of Health will release certain information in regards to that. But we are monitoring the situation very closely. We are doing all the reconnaissance. We have not been able to report any sighting of fish killers yet. But we are warning the public that if you have that, then you have persons, because I've seen it happen already, where people go and harvest the fish kill, and some may harvest to the extent that they will wish to sell it. So we are doing all in our power to ensure that there are no secondary risks, secondary hazard coming out of this event itself.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I know you have to go, and we're looking forward to see what happens throughout the day as you guys work towards, fix. I don't know.
Fix is good. Try
to find a solution.
Get back to normalcy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Pleasure.
And certainly. So viewers, we gotta go for a quick break, but we'll be right back just after this.